What is going on, everybody? It is your boy, Yuminski. Back out with another review. And today we are continuing our Superman review series. All this, of course, will be building up to James Gunn's Superman. And today we will be reviewing the Legacy sequel, Superman Returns. But before we get sexual, beginning the video, tell you guys to forget to subscribe to the channel because number one, it's absolutely free. Number two, also maybe help the YouTube algorithm. And I recommend the video to more people and maybe they could join. And do feel free to comment your thoughts on Superman Returns down below. But with that being said, guys, let's give a quick plot synopsis of the film, shall we? So transition issues,
While Lex Luthor plots to destroy him once and for all, the Man of Steel returns after a long absence to a much-changed world. Lois Lane has moved on with her life, and society has learned to survive without him.
So for those who do not know, if you couldn't tell by by the review I'm doing and by my cape, I am a big superhero fan. Have always been. When I was younger, I was even more obsessed with superheroes, where I loved everything with it, even some crap movies, to be honest. So, and when I was younger, like when I was about like 3 to 2 to 1, there were always these films that were in my rotation that I would rewatch constantly out of the superhero films. That would be the first 2 Chris Evans Fantastic Four movies. That would be The Incredible Hulk from 2008 with Edward Norton, the first Iron Man, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy with Tobey Maguire, Batman Begins, and this film right here, Superman Returns. This was the film I actually grew up with knowing Superman. Because I just hadn't watched the Christopher Reeve Superman movies yet until much later in life. So they basically, I didn't even know there were Superman movies before this one. So this is the one I grew up with. And like, this was a film that came out a year before I was born, where I was born in 2007. This came out in 2006. So I basically, it was that perfect window of time when I was born that I was able to check this thing out. So just keep that in mind with this movie review here, that I'll probably be a lot more positive on this film than most people are, because I have that nostalgia with this film, because it is the Superman I actually grew up with. So, with that being said, let's just get into the actual beginning of the review of Superman Returns itself, shall we? Alright, starting off with the good, we always start off with the good here for our movie reviews. Number one thing to talk about in here is the performances. I think the performances are great, mainly
By Brandon Routh as Superman and Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor. I don't think Brandon Routh quite captures the essence of Christopher Reeves, but he still delivers a good performance nonetheless. As well, I think Kevin Spacey separate the art from the artist.
There's some very, very funny moments that I kind of chuckled at with his back and forth between Lois Lane, particularly. I cannot say that word correctly. Particularly. There you go. Do not know why I can't say that word sometimes, but I can say it perfectly sometimes. I don't know. It's odd. But anyways, their back and forth was pretty funny on the ship when they get Lois and her son basically trapped on the ship. I thought that was pretty funny. So there's also a couple of comedic moments throughout the whole entire film with some awkward humor as well that I think certainly did work for me. Another thing to talk about in here is the way Metropolis looks, where it's kind of unfair to compare the way Metropolis looks in this film to the Christopher Reeves movies, because those movies were made in the late 70s and then the early 80s. So and this came out 2006, so definitely there was a big gap in technology from here to there, where everything certainly was more modernized. So this time around, you really get immersed in the city of Metropolis, where you get the full Daily Planet right there. Then you also get Smallville, get immersed in there because it's much more modern. Which, don't get me wrong, the Christopher Reeves movies themselves did a really good job at doing that, especially for the time. But this time around, when it's with more modern technology, I thought they did a great job with that in here. The action sequences
are great too. Specifically, the airplane sequence, I think, is easily a top 10 Superman movie moment for me. I love that scene. Also, you have the moment where Superman, the bullet goes into his eye and it completely implodes. I love that scene too.
This is not an action sequence, but this is a sequence as well that I do think is great in the film when Lex basically overpowers Superman. I think that's a great scene too, if you know the scene I'm talking about, which, funny enough, when I was younger, that was a scene that my parents always skipped over. But of course, I'm way older now, even though I looking back on it, it doesn't really make much sense. Why would you skip that? I don't know. Anyways, but I'm not gonna complain because I still think that's a great scene in here too. So the action sequences and there's a bunch of memorable sequences in here that are great. But that's a good done. Now let's move on to the mixed aspects of the film, which I have 3. First one, the one that I've been talking about briefly, it being a sequel to the Christopher Reeves movies. On one hand, there's some really nice little callbacks to those movies. However, there's parts of the film, not just the cast,
make it feel as if they're trying to reboot it, which is just odd when you have those two little things together.
The mix I have in here is the CGI and green screen. There's some shots in here that I think, just because this certain era, the CGI and green screen, I like the way it is, because, you know, it's very nostalgic for that time, because early 2000s, I'm very nostalgic for. So, seeing all the CGI and green screen back then, I don't think it's as bad then. So, it kind of looks more as if it's a comic book. But then, on the other hand, there's some certain shots, mainly at the end of this film, with Clark doing his little fly out of the earth and then do his circle around before that. That the CGI does not look good when he turns and stuff. So that's 50-50. Another one, which this might be controversial, but I actually have Kate Bosworth's portrayal as Lois Lane. I don't think she does bad in the role. There's moments, I think, as mentioned before, with the main banter back and forth she has with Lex Luthor in here. There's moments where I think, oh yeah, she does a good job, and there's moments as well where she feels as if she captures the same energy as the last actress from the last few Christopher Reeves movies. However, I don't think her and Brandon Routh have the chemistry that Christopher Reeves and... Gosh, why do I keep on forgetting her name? Anyways, but I don't think they have the chemistry as the original Lois and Superman have in here, where there's a couple of times where it just feels awkward in here, kind of. Which, that's supposed to be the point, really, because, you know, this film takes 5 years after Superman, takes place 5 years after, I think, maybe... Wait, yeah, it takes 5 years after Superman 2, because I totally forgot to mention, this film totally just disarrays and ignores Superman 3 and Superman 4, which... Who could blame them, to be honest with you? But there's a certain sense where, okay, yeah, it would make sense you haven't seen each other in 5 years, where it's kind of awkward. But the level of awkward in here with some of the characters, I don't know. It's just a little odd with them two's banter back, them two's friendship and throughout the whole entire movie. Anyways, now, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to this. And they love putting my boy in a certain situation all the time in comic book movies, don't they? But I have the love triangle between Lois, Superman,
and James Marsden's character of Richard White. For some reason, they love putting him in love triangles. I know I'm in the minority that doesn't like the X-Men love triangle, but in here, I think it's actually worse than that.
This is going to be one necessarily that doesn't bother other people, but for me, it was bothering me the whole entire film. So, Brandon Routh's eyes are brown in real life, I believe. Brown-ish. Anyways, But in here, they make Superman have very, very blue eyes. I mean, when I'm talking about blue, they're blue in here, where I think they're probably CGI. I don't think they're contact lenses, but the CGI for the blue eyes in here was just distracting to me. I don't know. It just felt off. I didn't like it in this movie, so that was just very odd to have in this film. That I kept on just going, what is up with his eyes? That's what I was going with that for this film. I'm stuttering. Final bad in here, the movie's length. The movie is extremely long. I think it's close to 2.5 hours long, which for some reason every Superman movie has to be that long, except for Superman 4, which I'll say one movie which we're going to talk about in the next review, I think warrants it. This one, the Christopher Reeve movies too, I don't think they'll warrant the 2.5 hour to 2 hour runtime, because in here there's some moments where, are we going? Are we not going? Are we going? Are we not going? You know, so where the pacing was a little, oh, then I remembered when I was younger. But then again, I loved everything superheroes when I was younger. So, can you judge me? Anyways, that is just my thoughts on Superman Returns. Let's bring out the Toxic Nita. And I'm going to give this a Toxic Goodness a B. I still really like this movie. Do I love it as much as I did when I was younger? No. But I still think it's really underrated amongst the legacy sequels that you've had over the years, where I think they do enough to basically pay tribute to the Christopher Reeves movies while also making them stand out on their own. But as I said before, ladies and gentlemen, that's just my thoughts on Superman Returns. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on this film down below, and stay tuned for my Man of Steel review, because I'm gonna have a lot to talk about there. So, anyways, but with that being said, guys, I'll see y'all next one, everybody. Peace.